This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. In this episode, I'm speaking with Oliver Hayden from Walworth Garden, a calm, inspiring and horticulturally significant community garden that's doing far more than just growing plants. We talk about the realities of running a free community space in London, why gardening can be a powerful tool for social change, and how reconnecting people with nature can quietly transform lives. It's a great interview that's full of big questions about the way we live and the landscapes we create.
I've always been obsessed with gardening. My dad bought a house in Enfield after we left the ghetto of what was then Stoke Newington. He did good and he bought a house in Enfield. But he bought a house that backed onto the allotments. That's how obsessed he was with gardening, and then bust the gate through the back door so he could have an allotment. And I used to follow him. And my earliest memories, I guess, of gardening are the intoxicating smell of creosote in sheds. Because of course in those days, most people used chemicals, etc. But that was my earliest recollection of gardening. It stayed with me and in its various guises all of my life up until now, although I have done many things and I have lived something of a checkered past. But most recently, I guess, prior to this, you won't not believe this, but I was the vice principal of an academy in Slough, and so quite conservative, and still quite conservative really, despite my views on some horticultural practices.
Excellent. And so what led you here to the Walworth Garden?
When I walked through that tunnel, I immediately fell in love, if I'm honest. It was a sunny day, and I'd come to do a bit of a recce. Having heard about this place in its earliest form around 1987, when I lived in Vauxhall, and I heard that some people had broken into a derelict piece of land. In those days, of course, we used to call it squatting, something of an unpopular term these days, but it had many merits in those days. And I remember thinking, oh, why have they done that? Well, remarkably, sometime later, some 30 years later, I think, I walked through that tunnel, that sort of arbour thing that's now covered in wisteria, and came out the other end and went, oh my God, what's this? And fell in love.
So then once you'd fallen in love, you then set up the garden here, or you continued it, I guess,
I continued it, yeah. So the garden's been here for, next year will be 40 years. Thanks to those community members and those activists that were brave enough and had a vision, it's still here.
And who is it open to currently?
It's open to everybody. It's free to enter. Open 365 days a year. And on Christmas Day, it's a very interesting sort of clientele.
Yeah.
I work Christmas days.
Do you?
Yeah.
So I guess it's a community space, so you can come in and just do your own thing. There's no obligation to interact with it in any way, shape or form. Or you can come in and learn.
Yeah.
You can come in.
So we have various
buy.
offers. We're accredited by City and Guilds to run what they call practical horticulture skills, but what we call environmental gardening. So part of our remit is that we try to de-academicise gardening. I think that the terms gardening and horticulture are used interchangeably and mistakenly at times. People say horticulture when they actually mean hole digging. It's gardening. You dig a hole and you put a plant in. And I think it excludes lots of people. All of this, polysyllabic words that are unnecessary. So we de-academicise. We do it with social and therapeutic horticulture, which we call gardening therapy, and we do it with practical horticulture skills. Well, what's that if not gardening? And we call that environmental gardening. So we lean into sometimes revolutionary and sometimes on the vanguard of conversation gardening practices. And we send our graduates out to an industry that is desperately in need of new thought. And as the years go by, another 96 students graduate and off they go. And we hear from them, we have an alumni, and it's very interesting to hear what they're doing and what their thinking is. But alongside that training, we offer gardening therapy and we propagate and sell our own plants. There's no money in community gardens, you understand? People walk through the door for free. You can't monetize that. So when I arrived here, I had to set to and work out, how are we going to make this work? How are we going to focus on paying people well, not be over-reliant on volunteers, and yet keep this free to enter? And lots of people do it in different ways. And this is the model that's been created.
So when you say you're adopting practices that are maybe at the vanguard of horticulture or gardening, which ones are those?
Things like nature first, making decisions that are not about you, even though you appear to be in control of a piece of land, making decisions that are about the promotion of other life alongside you. That seems to be a fairly unique attitude to take, especially in London or in urban settings where space is tight. I only have this little space. I want it to do this, 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 and this, and I want that plant to grow this high. Oh, no higher than that. And I have to often explain to people that we're not in control. And actually, that's the benefit of this. If you can just relinquish control a little, you'll find there is great pleasure and solace and therapy in just letting it happen.
So you spoke about monetising people or the inability to do that when they come through the door. And it is a shame that we have to see everything in pound signs. And also we have to have things in kind of measurables. How much do you push back against that, and kind of in what ways?
Well, I mean, it's really interesting because when I first arrived here and fell in love with it, as I said, we didn't used to sell plants. The practice here had been, as it is still in many community gardens, that they have a day when they sell plants, and that day was in May. And we recognised very quickly, once we had opened the gate fully and it was open 7 days a week, that there were very, very few visitors. And it took some time to understand that people like to spend money. They do. So offering them an opportunity to spend money on something that would bring them pleasure and would be long-lasting, potentially, was not necessarily a bad thing. And if we were to survive, we need to pay wages. And I have always said to our community and to both staff and outside of that, I have always said, we need to be unashamed about needing to make money. It's okay. It's okay. It's not bad. But it just depends on how you contextualize that money making. So one of the things that we do is we propagate our own plants. And the benefit of that, of course, is that you have absolute control about what it's growing in, what pot it's growing in, the provenance of the plant, the provenance of the seed, the cuttings, or whatever it might be that you're propagating by. We are in control of that. And so the benefit of that is that we can talk to our visitors about comparing a plant that's come from in-house propagation to one that's been brought in imported. And as we all know, imported stock has had a journey. It's usually in a brand new pot, which is likely to be thrown away. It's in a growing medium of which we have little control. We don't know what's in it. We don't know how it's been grown. We don't know what heat's been used, how that carbon has been burnt, etc., etc., etc. So if at the same time as making money to pay our staff, we can promote a sort of sustainability that will resound in people's lives, I think that's a good thing. Every encounter, I always say, is an educational one. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone, and this is grown in organic and peat-free compost, and they go, what's peat? And off we go again. Even now, people are asking what peat is. And you know, it's a great place to be. It's a privilege to be able to explain. And that changes people's thinking and their lives. And hopefully what that means is when they trot along to Morrison's around the corner to buy that very, very cheap and imported plant, they'll think twice and ask where it's come from.
Yeah, I think there is sometimes a tendency, especially when you're at the coalface and you're speaking to people who maybe don't understand the consequences of certain horticultural practices, or maybe you're dealing with people who are disadvantaged in some way. You want to change the world really quickly to help, and then sometimes you lose sight of the fact that you're chipping away at it slowly and you're just a piece in the kind of bigger puzzle.
Yeah, and it can be exhausting.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel that we are available all the time, and we can feel overexposed. We talk often as a staff of how it feels when you are on display and available to the public all the time. That's tiring, especially when so regularly the conversations start from a point of not knowing. So many people come in and go, I've got this garden, I don't know what to do with it. And so the conversation opens. We know that the possibilities are absolutely endless. But how do you start with that person who have somehow found themselves in here and looked around and gone, God, what is this? All this choice. And, I'm smiling now because I'm amused by it, but sometimes it is tiring too,
Do you think you have like a finite lifespan when you work in an environment like this in terms of your career? I don't mean like you're going to drop dead tomorrow.
No, I mean, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I hope it takes me to retirement. It changes every day, and so the stimulation never ceases. And I think that's a good thing, but it can also be a tiring thing. Little charities like this, I say little, relatively little charities like this, struggle. We are constantly living from either making money in the door or designing sustainable gardens or relying on grants. And I wish it was different. I wish the government recognised the work that we do and how beneficial it is. We repeatedly told we have this sick society. Mental health issues continue to grow, particularly amongst young people. We've heard of social prescribing, haven't we? And while medical centres continue to send their people to us to do gardening therapy instead of taking, antidepressants or whatever, there's never any funding. So this sick society is relying on this little charity to raise the funds to solve the problems of this sick society. Hang on, there's something not quite aligning there, isn't there?
Yeah, that makes massively. I mean, you're kind of like holding together the fabric of society, effectively, without any reward or official kind of funding. Yeah, it's
not right.
It's not right, no. And again, I said to you before we started recording, I think things really have to shift, and I believe that's one of the things. But it's nice because it's kind of creating a blueprint for a society where people do come together, where you volunteer if you're able, or you look for a job, and then the money kind of comes in because you've found a way to pay for that person. You've adapted, you've been entrepreneurial.
It is a good model.
It is a good model to follow, I think.
From sort of, if we go back to that often overly used expression, community, it is a good model. But I think what's also important here is that while we recognise the benefits of volunteering to individuals and communities, I'm adamant that we don't replace people who get paid a salary with volunteers. And I am perturbed sometimes when I see models in operation where there's an over-reliance on the volunteer. We're in the business of training gardeners. We want them to go out there and earn a decent wage. We're in the business of lifting people out of workplace poverty, similarly. And I want them to earn a decent wage. I want those people to be valued.
National trust. I didn't say that. I've always had a thing about relying on volunteer labour because it's not sustainable going forward, the way people's pensions have changed, and free time is becoming less free. But in terms of a decent wage, that is quite a hot button topic, and it is something I'm going to be talking about on the podcast more in the future. In your experience, is it quite possible to have the kind of maintenance or design arm of your charity and to make that, if not, profitable, then make it at least break even so you're able to pay people?
Yes,
have you found that quite easy to manage?
Absolutely, it is possible. There's a couple of elements in there that could do with tweaking and some clarity. One of the most important, I guess, is that people need to understand that having your garden designed and built is a luxury. Labour is expensive, and rightly so. And people need to understand that. So, and once they understand that, then you can make a surplus. We call it a surplus. And that surplus can be fed back into those areas of our operation that are not as able to bring in financial reward. coupled alongside that, that's the design and construct. And because we specialise in what we call environmental landscaping, some people, I mean, there's many names for it, but because we have a sort of niche area of operation in that, we are sought out by people. Increasingly, we appear on Google searches, etc., so which is great. But let's have a look at maintenance instead for a moment, which is another area that I'm really interested in and that needs some examination. My staff talk about maintenance when we talk about, the traditional mowing, blowing, trimming, litter picking, hedge cutting, which we hate, but which we do. We talk about a race to the bottom. It's almost as if our landscapes are so unimportant that as little as possible, please, as inexpensively as possible, please don't think, I can't pay you to think. And I take great offence to this. If you look at our parks, if you look at our housing estates, where there are often land surrounding them, so many missed opportunities where we might be promoting life, and actually largely we're creating deserts, or even worse, poisoning life. You go to any superstore, go to the local B&Q, go to the gardening section, it's all about death. Plastic bottle after plastic bottle telling you how to kill something. It makes me shudder. And then we've got a lot of work to do. But boy, am I excited about that work. What a privileged position I'm in. That I'm constantly chipping away at this understanding. What are you feeding your tomato plants? Oh, I'm feeding tomato right. Okay. Do you understand what the problem is with tomato right? Please will you use something like this organic seaweed extract? Do you see? At every turn. So in a way, to go back to what you asked earlier on about monetizing this, if I hadn't monetized this, I would not have these conversations, because it is about consumerism. What are you buying? What are you buying and how is it poisoning the land? I can tell you some alternatives. Do you see? So actually it's worked really well in our favour. People want to spend their money. And it might be £2 on a tomato plant and it might be 60 quid on something else. But they want to have a cup of coffee. So we sell coffee. It's organic coffee, but we sell coffee. And we have plant-based milk. And so in the early days, it was like, can we have a cup of tea? Yep, it's only plant-based milk. Is that all right? And they go, ooh. Well, why don't you try it? And now we don't get the ooh. They accept that we're a plant-based centre, and we're a plant-based centre for a reason. If you really are going to be sustainable, it doesn't involve the consumption of animals, guys. I know this is unpopular for lots of people.
It is, and I've just had Dave Goulson actually on the podcast, and he's got a new book out, and he says you can't argue with the science, I'm afraid.
There's no running away from it.
No.
And thank God for people like Dave Goulson. Thank God, because he writes really well and comprehensively on the subject. There's no running away.
No, there isn't. But this is a shining example. We're lucky to be sitting here in the garden, and it is beautiful. And I don't say that lightly, because I am really cynical and really fussy and very critical. But I'm sitting here and I'm just like, oh my God, this place is just stunning. So, you're kind of walking the walk, but obviously you had to start somewhere, and as a charity you're going to have stakeholders, I'm assuming, and you've got to convince them. What is the best way of convincing them that you're doing this for a very good reason? You've made these decisions, you've got this mission statement, you're following these principles. How do you convince them that that is the way forward?
I haven't really had much objection, if I'm frank. I'm just very quickly went through my mind about where have I had objection to this? There's been very little. People are delighted. The community is delighted that the place is open 7 days a week. They're delighted to hear that, no, we're not all volunteers. The trustees are delighted.
Happy days.
Happy days. So
Well
to
done.
say it's not without its challenges, don't get me wrong. We need to balance the books. We need to land with a surplus. I'm completely conscious of our financial struggles. But I'm always positive. I've got the most incredibly loyal workforce here who love working here. And we eat lunch together. I mean, it's pretty unheard of in these days that we cook lunch for each other and eat lunch together every day. That's quite something.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a really big thing. We put a kitchen in at charity where I work, and we call it the Harvest Hub because it is the hub. Like, it just brings everyone together, and it's so important.
So important, and we've lost it.
Yeah.
In most of society, everyone sits on their own in front of a computer screen with a curled up sandwich. It's gross. It's gross. What about the love of the people that you work with? What about the conversations? What about conviviality? It's missing in most of our lives, and it makes the workplace soulless and all about making money. I mean, we're very lucky we're a charity, so there is no big, nasty person at the top reaping all the rewards. What surpluses do we have? We put into our staff salaries, we put into investing into the site. So we're very lucky, and I really wouldn't have it any other way. I've landed in a place that makes me feel much more comfortable than I have felt in my past working life.
So there's always the question that gets asked, which is, what's next? Where is it going? But does it necessarily have to go anywhere?
That's a really good question, and alongside this question of growth, we are obsessed with growth. We're obsessed with making more and more money. However, unfortunately or fortunately, we live in a society that demands that we spend more and more because prices go up. You never hear about prices going down, do you? So as long as prices keep going up, wages have to keep going up. Well, if wages have to keep going up, where's that money coming from? We have to grow. We have to increase our prices. So this is the cycle that we're caught in. It's interesting, actually, in Southwark, because we are accredited London Living Wage members. And Southwark, with whom we partner on various fronts, is also adamant that their partners pay the London Living Wage as a minimum. And every time the London Living Wage goes up, as the chief exec here, I have to examine what does that do to our bills. Because it's not just the London Living Wage. As soon as you put the London Living Wage up, what about those people who sit on the rung above that? Because suddenly, I'm getting paid the same money as my supervisor. How does the supervisor feel? Do you see? So you've got this, it's not simple. And so from a strategic perspective, one has to make a decision about how are you going to respond to the consistent and persistent significant increases in the London wage this year at 6.9%. That's not small. I'm delighted, but the challenge is how do I deal with it to everybody's benefit? I mean, the greatest thing would be that everybody goes up 6.9%, but can your finances cope?
Yes, it's a balancing act, definitely.
Yeah. A welcome one.
Yeah.
A welcome challenge. And I applaud Southwark Council and those other boroughs that are doing it, that are adamant that people at the bottom of the heap should be paid a living wage. They should be valued for what they do. And we need to upskill them and build their confidence so that they can have rewarding working lives.
Yeah, absolutely. It is about that, isn't it? It's about funding the jobs that have been so undervalued previously that the wages just haven't been commensurate.
And to go back to the race to the bottom, in garden maintenance, in landscape maintenance, it's particularly prevalent. And, our company also maintains sites. As well as design and build, we also maintain various sites. And to varying different criteria. The most uninteresting of that is the mowing, blowing, trimming, litter picking, hedge cutting, as I said. But there are others who are more enlightened and who are prepared to come with us on a journey that will cost them less in time. And as I like to explain it, I want you to pay me to come to your site and not do something. Because traditionally it's about, look, boss, I was at the site, I pruned that shrub, but that shrub was about to flower. So why did you prune that shrub? So there has to be a greater trust between the client and the contractor so that I came, I looked, I made a decision not to prune that shrub. But yes, you still have to pay me. Is that too much to ask?
No, because you're employing your knowledge and your expertise. And
exactly, that's what you're paying me for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, being in a similar situation to you work-wise, I very much doubt whether you sit down too often and reflect on what you've done and what you've achieved and how amazing the place is. So taking this moment to think about it, what are you really, really proud of? What have you got coming up this year that you're just really excited about?
So, I could be glib and tell you that my greatest achievement is the brown sign at Kennington Tube Station.
I saw that.
Yes.
I was amazed
You know how
by
long
that.
it took me to get the brown sign?
I thought, wow, you've
Yes.
done well with that. Yeah. I didn't know. It was noted, yeah.
People laugh, but that took a lot of work.
Yeah, I bet.
There's that. But, we have got the most remarkable improvement plan coming, for which we are raising funds. Phase 1 of which is due to start in June, and phase 2 will follow soon after. But it will give us a second classroom. We have big waiting lists for people to join us. We want to reach more people. We want to train people in a different way of gardening. And we're doing that very successfully, 96 students at any one point. But a second classroom would allow us to double those figures. And, with the world of greenwashing at our fingertips, it's everywhere. What more real impact can you have than train a gardener? That will go on for all their lives. They will look at alternative ways of managing our landscapes.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to Ollie for such a passionate and thought-provoking conversation about community gardening, sustainability, and reimagining the way we care for both people and green spaces. If today's episode resonated with you, you might also enjoy episode 323, Wildflowers, Community and Urban Nature, and episode 275, Community Gardening. You'll find links to both in the show notes. And as always, thank you for listening. Next up is the fabulous Benny with his insect of the week.
The four-banded flower bee, scientific name, Anthophora quadrimaculata. This week's insect of the week is another flower bee. You may well remember the hairy-footed flower bee, Anthophora plumipes. Now, that species is one of the first kind of iconic solitary bees to emerge in the UK and Ireland, and that species is now sadly coming to the end of its season. There's still a few bedraggled bees trying to complete their season, but they're really, really right at the end now, at the time of recording, kind of towards the end of May now. The four-banded flower bee is absolutely stunning. It's got 4 kind of bands of hair on the abdomen, on the lower half. It's got green eyes, which are kind of really beautiful, and they're present on the bee in all stages whilst it's alive. There's another species that's very closely related that's just going to be coming out soon, called the green-eyed flower bee, Anthophora bimaculata. These two can be conflated. They have slightly different kind of preferences for nesting, but confusingly, they can occasionally be found in the same spaces, in the same aggregations almost. So the green-eyed flower bee is a sandy ground preferer. The four-banded flower bee, which I'm talking about today, that can be found in free draining ground, or it can also nest in masonry. So you have to really be careful with the identification. I've definitely made a mistake or two with this one in the past. The bee I'm talking about today is generally found in the southern half of the UK. There are no records that I could see in Ireland or the northern half of the UK in Scotland. So at the minute, it's located mostly in the southern half of the UK. With the climate shifting and moving, it may well push up and up. So we will see about that. It's a really, really cool species. I haven't mentioned the etymology yet. We've discussed Anthophora before, which is the Greek for flower bearer or flower carrier. And the epithet, the second part of the scientific name, quadrimaculata, which means 4 spotted. That relates to the 4 bands of the hair bands on the abdomen. So really cool. It says in the literature it's around from June to mid-August, this species, but we've been seeing it in the last few weeks in London. So it's kind of this year, at least mid-May. So keep an eye out for it. The plants that the female will collect pollen from are typically in the Lamiaceae, the mint family. So Nepetas are really, really good for this kind of bee. Black horehound, another one. Dead nettles, that kind of ilk of plant. I am seeing them on echiums at the minute quite a bit as well. So especially Echium pininana, the tree echiums. Not sure if they're pollen collecting or just drinking nectar off those, but they are present on those in sunny moments. It's a really, really stunning bee. I will be posting an image of this on Instagram so you can see what it looks like, but try and keep your eyes peeled for this one. It's the next flower bee to follow on from the hairy-footed flower bee. As always, please record any sightings on the iRecord or iNaturalist app and tag me in any sightings, please.
You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.